Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. I'm Robin Friedman, one of the co-founders of Tribe Talk, and along with my partner, Jude Sidney, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight for Searching for College Through a Jewish Lens. For many of you students here tonight, college will be the first time that you have total control over what you do with your free time. And there are an unbelievable number of organizations in college that you can get involved with. And tonight we're going to give you an overview of the Jewish ones, as well as the many items that you should give some thought to when selecting a college. In addition, of course, to the basics, such as size, cost, academics, location, and the like. We're lucky to have three amazing experts in the college field as panelists tonight: Edie Balsam, Eliza Canner, and Dana Ponsky. Edie holds a Master's of Education from Harvard. She also has a Master's of Social Work from Penn. She is a perpetual student. She's completed her certification in college counseling from UC Irvine and continues her love of learning by participating in training in graduate classes on adolescent development. She's the former assistant to the Dean of Student Affairs at Bentley University and Director of Student Affairs at Willow Hill High School. Before starting College Bound Advising, she founded and ran Successful Strategies, a strategy-based tutoring and standardized test preparation company. Her experience is working with students and their families, traveling across the country to visit schools, and meeting with admissions officers have helped her to hone her approach to empowering students to be their best selves. However, it is her role as a mom to three teenagers that have honed her ability to relate to students and their parents as they travel down the path to college admissions. Eliza Canner serves as Campus Engagement Manager at Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston. In her role, she works with students and campus professionals across Greater Boston to help cultivate Jewish life on campus. She's worked extensively on countering anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetoric on campus as a professional and as a student herself. And she's met with international leaders at the United Nations to speak on the dangers of the BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. She's thrilled to help students who are embarking on their college career to find their Jewish community on campus. Dana Ponsky is a proud graduate of the University of Maryland, Bowling Green State University, and the University of Miami. Dana began her career in education working at the University of Michigan, University of Miami, and Barry University, creating orientation and first-year experience programs. And 14 years ago, she transitioned to work as a school-based college counselor in Jewish day schools and has served as a director of college counseling in Miami, Washington, D.C., Brooklyn, and New Jersey. Today, Dana works closely with high school and college students and their families as the owner of Dana Ponsky Consulting Services and helps students to learn what it takes to have a great application to get into college, and most importantly, what is needed to have long-term success in college and beyond. She's the creator of a Facebook group, Being Jewish in College, and developed the video series, Kibbutz in 10 Minutes, with Jewish life leaders on campuses across the country who share important information about their programs to prospective students, college students, and their families. Before we turn the Zoom room over to the panelists, I just want to let you all know that we will be monitoring the Q&A, and feel free to put any questions in. We have collated all the questions that you have asked to date, and we will also incorporate those into the discussion that we're having. The panelists have seen those questions, and we will also continue to get those to you and to give you an opportunity to ask them. So without any further ado, we're going to start with Eliza. There are so many opportunities for Jewish students in college. Can you give us a brief overview of them so that the students here have an idea of what they might like to add to their college wish list when they're looking at colleges?
Of course. Thank you so much, Robin. And thank you, Tribe Talk, for putting together this series. As the campus engagement manager at Combined Jewish Philanthropies, it's truly wonderful to work with different campus climates in the greater Boston area and beyond. And many freshmen, first years come to me and they're wondering, I'm new to Boston. How can I get involved in Jewish life on campus? And there are so many ways, but it's all about finding what speaks to you, where you're at in your Jewish journey, and helping to find the clubs and organizations that are going to make you feel like you're Jewish home away from home. I was just at an event earlier today at Northeastern right here in Boston. And when speaking to the different students that were at the event, it was so it's so wonderful to hear that every single person was sitting in that room, but they found their Jewish home in a different way. Whether it was going to Hillel for the first year experience before classes even started, or their sorority or fraternity friends brought them to an event, you're going to find that every single student is going to have a different way that they're exposed to the Jewish life on campus, but yet they're able to cultivate that Jewish community in a really wonderful way. What you're going to find too when doing your research is that there's a lot of alphabet soup. You're going to see a lot of names of organizations and read a lot of acronyms. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And so the first place to really start is understanding the Hillel space and the Chabad space on campus. In some conversations, people have thought that you have to do Hillel or Chabad, but there's a really wonderful relationship that a lot of the Hillels and Chabads have on campus. There are over 550 Hillels across North America, and that's a really great place to start. Students think that they have to be a certain level of observance to either go to a Hillel or Chabad, but they're really welcoming and warm spaces for all students, regardless of religious observance or how they want to get involved culturally in the Jewish space on campus. There's also a lot of clubs and organizations that are interest-based. So there are Jewish sororities and fraternities that aren't just exclusive to Jewish students. However, they are really welcoming to Jewish students to feel like they're meeting their peers in a Jewish space. There's also clubs and organizations that fit with what you're studying or your interests, such as service. Hala for Hunger is an organization that's on many campuses nationwide, and that's a service-based organization. Tamid is an organization that connects business students or students that are interested in the business field with startups and businesses from Israel. So you'll find as you're going through different universities' club lists that there's many organizations that are going to fit your interests. There's also a lot of organizations that are university-based that support the pro-Israel community on campus. So each school may have a different name for it, whether it's Huskies for Israel or BU Students for Israel. They're going to have different names and different titles, but they're all ways that you're going to be able to connect with the pro-Israel community and be a part of that dialogue on campus. So you're going to find there's many organizations, whether they're on campus or off campus, that offer fellowships, internships, trips to Israel beyond just the birthright experience. There are many ways to get to Israel. So regardless of what you're interested in, you're going to find a club or organization that's going to fit that need.
Thank you so much, Eliza. There's students today have so many possible choices. It's really amazing. And to know them ahead of time so that when you're looking at a campus and you know what you might be interested in really helps. But before we get to looking at campuses, I'd like to ask Edie, what kind of communication should happen between parents and students? I know there's a big mix here of both parents and students. What should parents be talking to their students about and students talking to their parents about as part of the college process?
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin. And Eliza, you make me want to go back to college like right now. I wish as an adult, I had all of these options, so that's a whole nother conversation for another day, but that was great. Thank you. So thanks, Robin, and everybody at Tribe Talk. So my job today is really to start the process and start talking about what does it even mean about talking about when and where and how you build your college list. Dana is going to talk a little bit more about that, the list, when I pass the baton. I always say the best part of the college process for families is that beginning stages of the communication. But you have to know when, where, and how to start that conversation. If you start in the beginning and you understand your child and children, if you understand your parents and you understand their wishes on both sides, the process will become much smoother. So understand for both parents and children, when is the best time to talk to each other? I will tell you, after a long day of work, kids, I'm not ready to have a full-on in-depth conversation about when and where we're going to visit schools. And parents pretty much know at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, your teenagers probably don't want to talk about it either. So if you start talking about when we can have the conversations with each other, that's probably the first place I would start. I would also, and more for parents, I would say, know your child. Is your child excited about this process, or is your child already feeling, are they a little bit anxious about it? I don't know, where people are in terms of 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. So I'm really sort of gearing this conversation to 11th grade parents with 11th graders. Understand where your child is. If you're a parent of a sophomore, I would talk about college life in general, not about particular colleges. What are we looking for in college life, not what are we looking for in particular colleges? For parents, we may be anxious to get dates on the calendar on where and when we're going to go visit colleges. So start with the calendar and say to your child and your partner, let's talk about when we can go visit. It doesn't matter where. Let's just block out these weekends or this school vacation. And as we make our list, then we can plug the where. But start with the when. Let's see, what else? When you are starting to make that list, make sure you define what does a good school mean to each of you, right? Do parents say a good school has X, Y, and Z? Do students say, no, a good school to me means X, Y, and Z? In that sense, I would also say, what does Jewish life look like for you on campus? Are you on the same boat? A child may say Jewish life is joining a Jewish sorority and fraternity, and the parents are like, nope, we want to find one that has a Hillel, a Chabad, a this, a that, and that might not mean the same thing to your child. So having those understanding, those conversations at the beginning, so that when you get to a college campus, nobody is disappointed and nobody is sort of like, oh, why are we here? They don't have X, Y, and Z. And then I would say that I will leave you, because my time is winding up, my number one tip for every parent, for every student: do not talk to each other if you haven't eaten, because I will tell you, the conversations will not go well if either of you are hungry. So eat, kibitz, enjoy. It's an amazing, fun journey for all of us.
Edie, thank you so much. I wish that everybody had the benefit of all that wisdom for that and many other things that go on in family life. Really appreciate it. And Dana, I'm asking you to start us off with making the list and visiting the schools. What should we know?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dana. Thank you, Tribe Talk and Jude and Robin and everyone on the team for allowing me to join you all again and to be with Edie and Eliza again. So I could really talk for the next hour or so in regards to creating a list and whatnot. So I'm going to do probably a miracle and try to get this within this 5 to 8 minute window that I have. And if I do it, I'm going to be really proud of myself. So I wanted to kind of just fly through some of the factors that I think are super important. And I know that there's a lot that Edie will agree with me on this. Probably the most important thing that everyone should consider when developing a list is fit. That is kind of what you should put at the top of your list. Is we are here to find the best fit. Not the most popular name, not the biggest school, not the smallest school. You really need to find fit based upon each individual student's And that's a big focus is this as well. This is a student experience. And a family experience, but it is really an experience the student is going to be having. So it's very, very important that the fit of the institution is the most important thing. And as Edie was mentioning in her, talk about communication, the development of the college list comes from that communication. And so talking about topics about major, talking about the academic component, there are many different ways to explore what the academics mean for an institution. It can be based upon whether you're choosing to study just subjects that you find interesting, or is the subject leading to a specific career that you're hoping to achieve. So really being able to look at different institutions for what they offer. One of the best suggestions is look at a list of majors for the institution. And if your student looks at that list, or you are a student, you look at the list and you like a lot of the programs, right off the bat, you have an academically good fit with the school. If you like the name of the school, but you only find 1 or 2 degree programs, probably not going to be a good fit, because most students change their major at least 3 to 4 times before they decide what, their final decision. It's also going to be very important about co-curricular opportunities. I think you want to be able to look at athletic opportunities, theater, performing arts, music, dance, leadership, volunteer, career-related experiences like internships, Greek life, activism in whatever way that looks. Extracurricular opportunities are really important, because when you're in college, you're only spending approximately 15 hours a week in class. You have to fulfill a life outside of class that is made up of many different things in order to really have a full positive college experience. So developing a list that is going to have things that you enjoy doing that school is able to provide. Finances are also a huge factor. Cannot negate the fact that you have to have, in terms of communication, a very open, honest conversation of what your family is able to afford. And parents, I know this can be very uncomfortable, but sometimes you actually have to tell your student how much money you actually make, or how much your family is going to be able to contribute, and have some of these conversations of being transparent, because it has to go ahead. You have to be able to go ahead and create a budget for yourselves of, the school is $80,000 a year and they are not known for providing great financial aid. Maybe it just cannot be on that list. So talking about financial need and resources, and learning about need versus merit scholarship opportunities is also going to be a very important part of developing your list. Location is important. There's the funniest conversations are always when a student and parent are sitting on a Zoom call and the student says, "Oh, I really would love to go to California." They live in the East Coast. And the parent goes, "Oh, we're only thinking a 2-hour radius from where we live." And it's like, this is a good time to facilitate conversations. So please have a conversation of how far is too far, or how close is too close. There are, especially if you live in the Northeast, there are a plethora of options. But there are, there's over 3,000 schools in this country, but please have the conversation about location, because also included in that is the cost of travel, the ease of travel, and also in part of the communication with the family. How often do you want to come home? That's also interesting. Some students say, "Oh, I'll be home every weekend." And some parents go, "I don't want you here every weekend." So that's an important thing to communicate with. Weather is a major factor. I also can't tell you how many times I've had students or families say, "I really hate the cold, so I only want to look at schools in Maine." Well, or in Boston, let's be honest. And I'm like, all right, we've got to discuss what the weather map looks like. Maybe watching weather.com or the Weather Channel more regularly might be helpful. But the weather is important, because some people are very impacted by that. So keeping that as a major factor in developing a list is important. Jewish life, you have to talk about Jewish life, like we've already mentioned before. So I'm not going to rehash too much of that, but really talking about what type of Jewish community you want. If you're, more observant and you want to have, say, other Orthodox or modern Orthodox students, identifying the schools that have that. If you're more like how I grew up, which was more cultural and more secular, it didn't think about it too much, but I always knew I didn't want to be the only Jewish kid around. And so what does that mean when there's a smaller population? And just having that conversation and recognizing and asking the right questions. And and whatnot. Food, we were joking about, making sure you eat before you have a conversation. So you do this thing about 3 times a day on almost every single day you are in college, and that is simply eat. So it is really important that you keep on your list schools that are going to be able to facilitate your eating habits and behaviors. Obviously, kosher food stands out if you're Jewish, but honestly, if you have dietary needs, if you have allergies, if you have medical related issues revolving around food, gluten-free, that sort of thing, you need to consider those factors when looking at schools. There are wonderful institutions that are doing some really great things with making sure that from a wellness perspective, students are going to be well. And there's some other schools that just haven't really got on board with that. So it's an important part to consider food when you're building your list. And I also just really wanted to go ahead and give us some resources that I thought might be really helpful for families when helping to build the college list. The first thing I always recommend is go to your school's college counseling platforms. That would be Naviance, Maya Learning, SCORE, Siaflo. There's a lot of different platforms that many schools use. I highly recommend using them to help do a general search for schools. Also, if you want to just learn about individual colleges, there's something called the Common Data Set. And it's a lot of numbers and it's a little hard to understand, but you can get a lot of really good information from more of a statistics and quantifiable data that can help you with developing a list. If you need to look at different apps that are out there, the College Guide has an app. Loper is a new app that is available for students to be able, it's almost like swipe left, swipe right about different schools and different options to help develop a college list. To learn about financial aid, there's the government has a really great financial aid website. Tribe Talk has a really fantastic resource. They do college comparisons. So as you're developing a list and you want to know, does this school have kosher food? Does this school have Judaic studies or Hebrew language courses? They offer some really great, ability to compare schools against one another. There is an independent college counselor, Laura Hosted, who goes ahead and has Campus Highlights, which is a great newsletter that comes out on a monthly basis, where you can learn about different events that are going on throughout campuses in regards to Jewish life. And then there are videos that I put out called Kibbutz in 10 minutes, which are just 10-minute videos with Jewish life leaders that can help you solidify that list that you're trying to make. So I think that, using some of these resources and thinking about some of the things that I just mentioned are going to be helpful for you to go ahead and create the list that's going to be really purposeful and at the end of the day, be empowering and develop the right fit for your student. And I went over my time, but I'm okay.
But Dana, you did amazing. That was a lot of information. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I have a question. I think we're going to start with Eliza here. This is basically a summary of the questions that everybody who put a question in asked, which is, in light of the current climate of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism that we're hearing about on college campuses, what should we be thinking about? And should we be avoiding certain or thinking about specific schools?
Important question. And I want to take a step back and discuss or point out a list that started a couple of years ago in 2017, a publication sent out. Muted? Am I good now? The worst college campuses for Jewish students. And the list alarmed both parents, incoming students that were at those campuses at the time. And it was puzzling. Some of the schools that were on the list were puzzling to people because, to use one example, I won't name out the school, but it was listed as the 9th worst campus for college or Jewish college students, but yet 27% of the college population there were Jewish. So people weren't quite sure, what does this mean? Clearly, there are a lot of Jewish students there. How can it be a bad place for my child to go, for my Jewish child to go? And what any Jewish professional would share with you is that there is no such thing as a bad campus for Jewish students to go to. in the news, we're hearing quite a bit about anti-Semitism that exists on college campus. All eyes are on college campuses, and parents, grandparents want to know what their children can expect. In a survey that went out last year, or survey results that came out last year from the ADL, 43% of college students, and this was a survey that was sent to over 400,000 current college students at over 1,000 universities in North America, they responded 43% that they had personally witnessed or experienced anti-Semitism in their collegiate career. But on the flip side, 67% of those respondents said that they feel like their campus is welcoming and accepting of them as Jewish college students. So while it's unfortunate, the unfortunate situation at hand is that anti-Semitism does exist at many campuses across the United States currently. There's also plenty of options that make these college students have a really wonderful experience as Jewish students. So to answer the question, no, there is no campus that is a bad campus to be as a Jewish student. But what it is important to think about as you're looking at campuses is how administration is responding. Administration, professors, the Jewish organizations on campus, how they're responding when an incident happens. But the majority of the college students that I work with today, they don't even think about the bad that's happening. They're really focused on the ample opportunities to be a proud Jew on campus.
Thank you. Edie, I know you had something also that you had about this topic.
Sure, thanks. That was great, Eliza. So one of the things that I often suggest when kids are now made their list, they've had a conversation with their families, and now you're on campus, right? You've gotten to the campus. What do? Well, you go and you can visit the Hillel, you can visit the Chabad, but really look at the posters on the walls of the Student Center. Walk through when you're going on the tour, look, keep your eyes open. And I do at the touch, feel, smell is of the campus, right? I just went on a college tour with my son. Unfortunately, we went on Sukkot, so clearly the Hillel and Chabad were not there. However, we took the opportunity to still go to the building and walk around and look at all the wonderful things. We also, and I make a suggestion to this, if you're on campus or go online, look at the campus newspapers. That's where you're going to hear how the administration is handling any bit of anti-Semitism. So if you're on campus, get the hard copy. If you're not going to campus, just go online and read the op-eds, see what the climate is, and if there is a place for open debate and safe spaces. That's really where a student may feel how the administration and how the school is responding if there is the unfortunate instances of anti-Semitism.
So we've had a few questions now about where do I find the real Jewish life? Like, how do I tell what's really going on? So Edie, you've given some suggestions in terms of walking the campus, looking at what's on the walls, reading the student newspaper, always great. The student newspaper usually gives you a ton of information, more sometimes than you want. Anybody else have any other suggestions as how we can, there's really no book I know of that gives you the real Jewish life. So any other suggestions for parents on this? Because this seems to be a really important topic for everybody.
I would add that if you speak, I'm like, it's going to keep going back to food for me, it seems, in this conversation. Sorry, probably because I'm also a little hungry. But I think that one of the things to do also is, I'm the same way, always pick up a newspaper, but eat in the student center at the campus and eat and just literally turn your head and just start talking to a student and just ask them, oh, what year are you? Where are you from? It does, that student does, or those students don't have to be Jewish. But it's a really great opportunity to just start conversation with the current students that are there. The other opportunity, if you really want to get like an in-depth more from like a Jewish perspective, is reach out to the Hillel, Chabad, or Jewish Life Center and ask if you can join them for lunch, or if there is a opportunity for you to go and just sit and eat with students. So there's a lot of campuses that do have places for students that are Jewish to eat, especially with kosher food. Go there and ask the same question of, so what's your experience as a Jewish student on campus? You can do that and have snacks, whatever you want to do. But that to me is always a really great place. And in terms of just like a book or resources, there isn't one. I have looked high and low, but it's sits in the back in the recesses of my brain when I'm not in the middle of 12th graders right now. But I think that there's a few of us in the realm of being both Jewish college counselors who work with a lot of Jewish students and families who our brains might be coming together soon to try to create a resource, since we know it's very needed and would be very appreciated.
Panelists, is there a benefit or detriment to selecting a large, a middle, or a small school in terms of Jewish life?
I'll take that because I will talk from my family's perspective, because I have 3 children and they all want something different in school. But before I do that, I'm just going to add one thing to what Dana said about Hillel. I was shocked at how many Hillels would offer a sleepover. Some kids who are traveling far, the Hillel director will say, hey, we have a student who's allowing you or offering for you to stay over in their dorm for the night. So, right, you have to know your kid, and students know yourself if that's something you feel comfortable with, but that is absolutely something that a lot of Hillel directors will facilitate. I will also say just one thing on Greek life, and then I'll answer the question. I worry about just looking for campuses with a Jewish fraternity or Jewish sorority. We all know that Greek life can come and go at the fleeting instance with the will of the administration. Of course, they're not all always the best kids. They sometimes do some things that maybe the administration frowns on. So look at all sororities and all fraternities, and if Jewish students are joining. My personal experience where I went to undergrad, I did not join a Jewish sorority, but my sorority was 90% Jewish, my chapter of my sorority. So, right, so just that one little thing when you're talking about getting involved on campus. So big, small, medium in terms of
Before we get to that, Edie, we got another question, a follow-up to what you just said.
Okay.
What Jewish opportunities are there on campuses without Hillels?
Oh, so I'll address that all together, the big, small, and middle, because one of my daughters is at a small school that does not have a Hillel. There's a Chabad, and there's a Jewish, there's an Office of Jewish Life on campus. And we knew that going in. It wasn't a surprise to us. She wasn't sure how she was going to feel about getting involved with Chabad. And she said, okay, well, I'll get involved with the Jewish organization on campus. And I'll tell you, she's now a senior, and Chabad has become like a savior for her. And she's actually even on the board of Chabad, which is like truly amazing. But they also have, even through her Chabad, even if there's not a Hillel, there are these, and I'm totally blanking on the name. I think it's called Sinai Scholars. Maybe somebody can let me know if that's true, where she was able to take courses on Jewish life. It was run by the Chabad rabbi, but I don't think it's run through Chabad, but please correct me if I am wrong. And now she is able to now TA for that and figure out what Jewish life is like for her without a Hillel. My other daughter, also at a small school where there is a small Hillel that is connected with the synagogue in the town of her school. And it's been a really nice environment. So for those kids, a small school is great. My son, who's a junior, has already said, when I asked him what is he looking for, he wants a much bigger school with a Jewish fraternity, with a large Hillel where he will be able to go eat his meals and spend some time. So there is no right answer on should you look at big, small, or medium. To Dana's point, it's about fit. And I will say, if you can get rid of 2 words in your vocabulary when you're talking about colleges, is should, because there are no shoulds. And I like to say fits with an S, and schools with an S, and dreams with an S. If we can get rid of all the singularity words, the process will be great for all of you.
Thank you very much. All great advice. Okay, another question has come up, and this comes up pretty much on every webinar, which is high holidays and taking off. Does somebody want to talk about that? Is that something that students should be asking about, looking at? What are the rules on that? It's a question that came up tonight and generally comes up in every time we discuss this topic.
I can start this one. So we were actually, the panelists were discussing this prior to the call starting, but at all public universities, they are mandated to allow any student to have an excused absence for religious observance. So a student will not be penalized if they have to miss a class or an exam due to it falling on a Jewish holiday. The same, while private universities don't have that mandate, there's usually a fair amount of forgiveness from many professors. All it takes is a conversation with that student and that professor. And if it needs to be elevated to administration, there will be plenty of ways that that student will be able to find that support. In the college realm, it's really important that we actually start to see a bit of a shift of that conversation happening. So the student doesn't necessarily need to be the one asking for that excused absence, and the professor is actually the one being able to relate to students that the high holidays are coming up, or an exam is scheduled on Shabbat. If you need to miss this exam or class due to religious observance, you may do so. So there's definitely a bit of that shift happening, but we're hoping to see it across college campuses.
And I would add one thing as well to this, that I think it's important to remind students that as this slow shift happens, and there are administratively at private schools and public schools, administrations generally have policies that do excuse students during holidays, and not just holidays that Jewish students celebrate, but other faiths as well. And there's really an effort being made at a lot of campuses, to be mindful of that. But I think also, until we get to that point where it is the norm for faculty to go to the student to say, we are providing this, I think this is just a really great opportunity for students to begin to learn how to advocate for themselves. So just like students who might have a learning difference and have accommodations, the faculty aren't always going to know that information. And so while the school does a great job of trying to disseminate information to their faculty, it's also on the side of the student to be their best advocates. So if they were to have a learning difference, to say, hey, I need extended time, or I need, a note taker in a class, they would go and say that to a professor and hopefully have the confidence and to be able to do that. I think that it's not very different for a Jewish student to then go ahead and say, hey, this is, an important part of my educational experience. This is what I think I'm going to need, and doing that advocacy for themselves. And I think in the future, the goal is that the gaps will be bridged, but I think that this is an excellent time for students to learn that sense of personal advocacy, because the reality is that this is what will happen when they're not in college, when they're going into an employment situation and they cannot work on a particular holiday and have to advocate for themselves in that way. So learning that's like the building blocks, can start in college, where they can go ahead and ask those things.
So Dana, following up on this idea of student advocacy and doing things for themselves, there seems to be a growing trend for kids to tour with other friends rather than parents. What would you say about that?
I love the idea, but I love it if the students and their friends behave in a way that best represents their maturity, and not that it is just demonstrate yourself in the best way possible. It's not a job interview, but don't roll out of bed having had a nice time with your friends, going to a campus tour, not thinking about what you look like. Oftentimes, when students are with their families, somebody says, "Oh, you might not look so schlumpy," as my family might say. But I think that it's a great opportunity for students to be able to do that. I think that, everybody's family situation is different. Sometimes there could be the opportunity to go with students and they could stay with people who are staying on the campus, which is typically what I have found happens. They might have a sibling or a friend who's already on a campus. I just think that a very quick conversation to say you are representing yourself as well as your high school when you go to on that tour, because they do ask all the information. Who are you? Where do you go to school? That sort of thing. So I think just reminding students that they are there, it's almost like a business interaction at that point. So just to put their best foot forward, and that to curb the excitement of, it's not really about your friends and what your friends are doing, but it's you and your particular interactions with everyone, and to just present yourself in the best way possible.
And I'll just jump in and say that developmentally, whether we as parents like it or not, our kids will believe their friends much more than they will believe us. So that has pros and cons, right? It has pros if it's a school that we are secretly hoping they wind up at and their friends are, chitter chattering and it's all great. The con is if your child really is pro a school and their friends aren't. Right. And so we need to, and they may be then swayed to then downplay how much they like that school. And so I think that, again, I know I harp a lot on communication, but I think that if your child is going to go off with their friends, really making sure that you have those conversations before and after about what is it that you are looking for in a school, because just because you might really like this school, but your friend might not, and that's okay. And really to weed that out. And then on that, talking about communication and listening is that there are going to be schools that your child is going to apply to that your friends might not agree with. So I always say we have to be like those racehorses in the Kentucky Derby. We need those blinders. Those blinders are on for a reason, right? If the Kentucky Derby horses take off those blinders, they go into the rails and they never finish the race. If they have their blinders on, they're only focusing on their particular journey. And so if you and your child can do that, then go right at it. Have them go visit these schools, have them experience the schools, but make sure they're staying true to what they really want.
Great advice. What about access and doing virtual touring versus in person? What are your feelings on that? Because since COVID, we've had much broader opportunities to be able to visit schools virtually. Any feelings on that?
I think that doing virtual touring or information sessions is fantastic. I think actually, to be honest, I think that it's provided so much more access for students from around the country who may not have the financial needs to be able to go ahead and financial means to be able to go ahead and travel. So I think the fact that colleges it took them a long time to get to this point of, it's like, who knew we needed a pandemic to learn how to do, webinars and virtual information sessions? Thank goodness we have. But I think that by doing that, it's provided access to students and families, which is actually, a wonderful thing, in my opinion, that there's so many more students who get to learn about colleges. It has impacted the college admissions landscape on so many levels, because what that means is that there are more students accessing these schools. There are also more students applying to these schools, which is why you're seeing so many, in particular, many schools have these much higher application pools than they've ever had before. But I think realistically, take advantage as many of these virtual information sessions as you can. I think it's a good way to start weeding things out, because you can definitely listen to them and just think, I don't know if I like the vibe. And again, remember, there's another thing, is that students and parents do not take in information through media the same way. And so a student can read body language very differently than an adult can through an interaction like we're having right now. And so I think it's very important that if a student goes ahead and is on a virtual information session, gets off, and you as a parent are like, I love that, and their student was like, no, you're going to have to kind of reel it in a little and just be like, okay, they saw something that maybe they can't verbalize, but that is in their gut telling them it's not the right fit. And that way you can then focus some money and attention to the schools where there does seem to be. It's a good kind of first step. And I think I think one of the best things that's come out in the last couple of years in terms of how we've dealt with COVID, that the virtual sessions are a great opportunity for students.
Is there such a thing as tour overload?
Well, not for me.
Yeah, Dana and I can tour colleges from now until so Dana, we got to go. We got to plan our next trip.
Right.
So I do think there is tour overload if you try and do 2 tours from 2 schools in one day. Unless you have to, could you see, and I don't mean to just name schools, but could you do GW and American in the same day if you're flying into DC? And absolutely. But I always, suggest, can you really spend time on a campus instead of rushing in, seeing a campus and leaving? So I think that tour overload, if you're looking at April school vacation and you are trying to do 10 schools in 7 days, yes, by the 6th, 6th school, you have no idea if you're at, school X or school Y or, whatever, and you're cranky and you're hungry and everybody just wants to zone out, right? So yes, I think that there is information session overload too. So I think sometimes it's okay to just do what I call the drive-by. If you're going to, and I'm just making this up, right? So I'm not promoting any school here, but let's say you're going to upstate New York and you really think that your child or you really want a big rah-rah school and you're going to Syracuse, I suggest do a drive-by at Colgate. You don't have to get out and do the whole tour and whatever, but drive by, go and see what a small campus is. Maybe then take another day and drive and look at a total different campus. So to sort of make a variety of how you're touring the schools, so that you don't get that tour overload.
And when you're touring, do you recommend sitting on classes at a prospective college, helpful or not? Is it even allowed?
Some schools, I'm not so sure it's really that helpful.
Yeah, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I do think, I will say this, there are some schools that historically in the past will ask, very pointed questions in the college application in the supplemental essays, like why this particular school. And I would say that sometimes I find that the students who have sat in on classes will be able to speak very specifically about my experience sitting in on a class with such and such professor made me really excited. More often than not, when my students come out of a class, they go, oh, that was boring. Because let's be honest, not a lot of the classes are super exciting all the time. And so I think that it's like a very hit or miss. I think that again, I think there's other parts of a campus that could be really interesting, but if you're there for like a day, day and a half, maybe, one class that maybe the person who is maybe giving you kind of like a tour of the campus, or if they're saying, oh, I'm happy to bring you to this class, it's an interesting one. I don't think that's too much of an issue, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
But what I do think is necessary, or not necessary, a nice, added touch, is if your child is really interested in something specific, whether it's communications, it's investing, it's labs, go off the tour. Right? So if your school, if you're on a tour and they just do the periphery and they don't really, at this point, even with COVID still out there, a lot of the restrictions are lifted, and the academic buildings during normal hours are open for you to go in and take a peek. You can't get into the dorms probably, but go in. We were just on a college tour and I was amazed at their sports analytics room. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing ever, but we didn't see that on the normal tour. We just, so that's what I think is much more helpful than sitting in on some random lecture in Psych 105. Just saying.
Okay, two more questions, one in this area and one a little broader, which is, when you're touring a school, how much does touring the neighborhood around the college campus play in for you guys? How important is that?
I think it depends on the student.
Yeah.
There are some students who think of their college experience as being just on a college campus within its four walls, so to speak. And some students' vision is they want their campus, or they want their college experience to be integrated with whatever area it is that they have decided that they want to go to school. So I think it really very much depends. I have some students who go, the funniest is when a student comes back, two separate students who don't know each other come back from the school. One will say, the surrounding area was amazing, I really liked it. Another goes back and go, oh my God, it's so boring. You realize it's just a personal opinion. It really just depends. I don't think that I think it can be very important, but I think it's just the individual student's perspective. I think that, there's a lot of conversation about safety. Most of the time, that if you are concerned about safety being an important factor to you in the admissions or in this whole entire process, that you should be asking that question to the university itself. There's something called town-gown relations, which is how the university has a relationship with the area that it's around. If you're concerned about safety, or you're concerned about that relationship, ask the people in admissions, can they speak very specifically about what goes on both on and off campus? How integrated is the community to the school? Some schools do an excellent job of having community come onto campus. Some schools don't. That's just not a priority or a value for them. So I do think that that's part of creating the list, is what do you value? And if it's of value, then check it out. And if it's not, then it's not.
Well, and also, that's a great point, Dana. The people in the offices actually live in that town. Right? And so, I'm not right. So they know what that real relationship is firsthand.
So last question here, which is, how important is the percentage of students, Jewish students, to you guys in terms of how does that factor in the percentage of Jewish students on of the undergrads on a college campus?
Here's a great example. I'm going to name the college. I'm going to be okay with this. So I was recently at Ursinus College in Pennsylvania. Interestingly, and I realized this as I've done interviews, most colleges do not actually have a specific number that they know how many Jewish students are on campus. It is no longer asked on a college application. It is not a part of it anymore. So colleges are collecting data, whether a student is Jewish, in multitudes of ways. So every number that you see is an estimate. It is not the exact number, the exact percentage. And I remember being at Ursinus College, a very small, private liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. And they speculated that they have about 150 students. Well, 150 students was 10% of their population. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And in reality, it's not a school that people think there are a lot of Jewish students. Now, the question wasn't the percentage of Jewish students. The real question was, how many active Jewish students are there on campus? How many are engaged in the Jewish life on campus? How many students are at a Shabbat service on a Friday night? How many are on leadership positions that are being promoted by any Jewish life organization on campus? Those, I think, are the better questions to ask as opposed to the numbers. Because I think that if you have a value as part of your fit that you want to be in an active community, that active community could be 25 to 30 people. And that's a lot of people, whether you're at a 10,000 person school or a 100-person school. So I think that those are the kind of questions to ask. I don't focus too much on percentages. I focus more on just what is the general desire or need of that particular student to be either around a critical mass or just around active students on the campus.
And I will echo that, and I'll speak to just personal experience from my my middle daughter. She's at a very small school, and the first Friday night Hillel had 50 people, and now we're a month and a half in, and there's 20 to 30 people that are going apple picking and going to Hillel on Friday nights and doing different things. And you know what? She's like, I don't know if I could handle much more because I don't know how many friends I can really have, right? So I agree with you, Dana. It's about finding your community and access to different services and events and a relationship, again, with the town. And is there a Jewish community in the town that can supplement if the campus doesn't have the resources because of this?
And I think since we promised that this was going to be over at 9, I think that is a perfect place to end. And I'm turning it over to Jude.
Oh my God, we could keep going and going and going. You guys are incredible, fantastic. I'm really, really thrilled that we are wrapping up. But I know what I'm more thrilled about is that we're actually recording this so that for those of you who want to go back and listen again and share with your friends, we will have that available to you very soon. But I want to thank Edie Balsam, Dana Ponsky, and Eliza Canner for joining us this evening and taking the time to have that thoughtful conversation on what it really means and how we can be better educated as families and as students as we figure out this really complex challenge of the search and selection process heading to college. It's complicated, but these folks, I think, have really been amazing in terms of trying to pull the layers back off the onion. And so I really want to encourage all of you to listen to it again. Very soon it will be up on our website at tribetalk.org. You saw we had posted that in the chat, as well as the other resources that Dana and Edie and Eliza had mentioned. That will be also made available to all of you as well. I hope you enjoyed the program. We are really incredibly grateful for all of you who have joined. And I know that I really want to thank our partners at CJP and the Jewish Teen Initiative, because without their incredible support, these programs would not be available. Please mark your calendars. December 4th is our next session. And Robin and I were canvassing and chatting earlier about the topic. It seems like anti-Semitism of some sort on campus will be the subject matter, but stay tuned for more follow-up. And really want to thank you for joining us tonight. An early Thanksgiving. I know we haven't turned the calendars yet. It's not even November, but just want to wish you all a very, very, very happy and a healthy holiday. And we'll see you in December. Thank you so much for joining.